Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're skipping the usual pleasantries and jumping straight into one of the most intense, high-stakes border meetings of, well, ancient mythological proportions. Imagine a war council where the attendees aren't corporate executives, but ancient serpents. And the crisis? It's not a drop in quarterly profits. It's the complete and absolute annihilation of their entire race. It's a genuinely fascinating look at crisis management, groupthink, and the crushing weight of leadership, all drawn directly from a brilliant piece of ancient text. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just think about this terrifying premise for a second. What would you do if you, your brothers, and your entire lineage were cursed to be completely wiped out in a roaring fire? No escape. Just done. This is the exact existential dread facing King Vasuki, the leader of the snakes, and his serpent brothers, Airavata and the rest. They've been handed an absolute death sentence, and man, the clock is ticking. Which brings us to the origin of the panic. The mother of all curses. Literally. Here is the absolute nightmare they're facing. The text tells us they are under a curse from their very own mother. And as Vasuki points out, you can find remedies for a lot of curses out there, but there's no easy fix when you're cursed by the person who brought you into the world. To make matters infinitely worse, this curse was uttered in the direct presence of the immutable, infinite, and true Lord. And what did the immutable Lord do when he heard this literal genocide being pronounced? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He just listened. Now, this curse is manifesting in the physical world through King Janamejaya. He is preparing a massive, terrifying snake sacrifice specifically designed to burn and destroy every single serpent. The doom is locked in.
And King Vasuki, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He literally tells his council, "Surely our annihilation hath come." Imagine being the leader of a nation and having to open your strategic meeting with that sentence. His heart is trembling. The pressure is just suffocating. He realizes that because the infinite Lord stood by and let the curse happen, they are truly, utterly on their own. They can't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They have to actively find a way to stop an unstoppable fate. And they cannot waste a single moment.
But, Vasuki is a leader, and leaders have to offer hope. To rally his panicked brothers, he sets the goal. They must pool their wisdom and find a means of deliverance. To frame this seemingly impossible task, he compares it to the great myths of the past. He reminds them of how the gods of yore successfully regained the lost fire, Agni, after he had concealed himself in a dark cave. He's basically telling them, yes, this is impossible, but the impossible has been beaten before. We need to stop Janamajaya's sacrifice so we don't meet with total destruction. So, the brainstorming begins. Let's look at their first strategy, sabotage and deceit. The offspring of Kadru assemble, and man, the ideas just start flying. At first, they try to think their way out of it using manipulation. One party suggests deception. Hey, let's put on disguises, pose as superior Brahmanas, and simply beg King Janamejaya not to hold the sacrifice. Another group suggests control. Let's demand the sacrificial fee right at the outset. That way, the king is placed in our power and has to do what we like. Others lean into sabotage, suggesting they sneak in at night to steal the sacred vessel of soma juice to completely ruin the ritual. You can literally feel the chaotic energy of this brainstorming session. They are throwing every non-violent trick at the wall just to see what sticks. But notice how quickly the ideas escalate from clever tricks to absolute desperation. First, they suggest infiltrating the king's inner circle, becoming his favorite manipulative counselors so they can advise him against the sacrifice from the inside. When that doesn't seem foolproof, the ideas get, well, a little wilder. How about we physically become luminous lightning clouds and pour rain to extinguish the blazing sacrificial fire? Or, and this shows just how frantic they're getting, how about we sneak in and defile all the pure sacrificial food with snake urine and dung? Because nothing says saving the world like ruining the catering, right? And if all else fails, one faction says, let's just wait until the king is playing in the water, kidnap him, drag him to our home, and tie him up. The pressure is rapidly turning their strategic planning into an absolute frenzy. And when deceit doesn't feel like enough, we move to the next phase. Strategy 2. Escalating to violence. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying nature of groupthink under extreme existential threat. When they realize the deceit might not work, the bloody proposals begin. Step 1. Let's bite the main sacrificial priest so he dies and the sacrifice cannot be completed. Step 2.
What if they just replace him? Okay, then let's bite all the appointed Ritwicks, all the secondary priests. Step 3, what if that isn't enough? Then let's just bite people by the hundreds and thousands. Let's spread mass terror around the entire event. And finally, step 4, the ultimate escalation. Let's just bypass everyone, approach the king directly, and assassinate him.
Listen to the chilling justification the snakes proposing the assassination use. By his death, the root of all evil will be torn up. This is the final deliberation of us all. They've completely convinced themselves that murdering the king isn't just a survival tactic. It's tearing up the root of evil. Fear has completely rationalized extreme violence. They demand Vasuki act on this, telling him to speedily do what is proper now that they've given their final advice.
But then, we hit a crucial turning point. The voice of virtue speaks up. This builds a massive philosophical tension right in the middle of a war room. The violent snakes, driven by sheer terror, are screaming to bite the king and tear up the root of evil. But other snakes, described in the text as more virtuous and kind, step forward, and they completely shut down the violent plan. They declare, "This counsel of yours is evil. It is not meet to kill Brahmanas." And they deliver a really profound warning. Unrighteousness finally destroyeth the world. They're arguing that surviving by committing atrocities is actually worse than death, because unrighteousness itself will end up destroying everything anyway. The virtuous faction leaves the council with this guiding principle. In danger, that remedy is proper, which is blessed on the practices of the righteous. This single, powerful thought cuts right through the panic of the room. It reminds us, and the terrified snakes, that ethics don't just disappear when you're in danger. In fact, crisis is the true test of morality. Even in ancient myths, facing literal genocide, the means matter just as much as the ends. Which brings us to our final theme, the immense burden of leadership. After listening to this entire chaotic debate, King Vasuki has to make the call. And here is his verdict. He looks at his brothers and flatly rejects their final violent determination. He tells them outright, "The advice of you all is not to my liking." He refuses to authorize the assassination or the mass terror. He doesn't know exactly which tactical suggestion to adopt, but he concludes that the only true righteous remedy that will actually do them good is relying on the grace of their father, the illustrious Kasyapa. He actively chooses faith and grace over unrighteous violence. So the crucial point is captured perfectly in Vasuki's final, incredibly vulnerable admission. "That must be done by me, which would be to your weal. It is this that makes me so anxious, for the credit or the discredit is mine alone." This perfectly encapsulates the agonizing, isolating reality of leadership. The committee can brainstorm, the council can argue, and factions can scream for violence or peace, but at the end of the day, the leader stands alone. If they survive, it was his call. If they burn, the discredit is his alone. It is a breathtakingly honest moment of anxiety from a legendary king. Which brings us to the ultimate question we have to walk away with today. Think about Vasuki's impossible choice. In the face of total destruction, when your very survival is on the line, is true leadership about taking the most drastic, violent action necessary to survive, or is it about having the courage to hold the line on morality even if it might cost you everything? It's a question from an ancient mythological crisis that rings just as loudly in the boardrooms and war councils of today. Think on that, and we'll see you in the next explainer.